Entrepreneurs are everyone's favorite heroes. They're praised and glorified in TV shows, books, movies, magazines, private conversations, in social media. Despite the hype, however, figuring out who exactly are the entrepreneurs, what they do on a day-to-day basis, and how to best measure entrepreneurship quickly dissolves into an intellectual confusion. Because defining and measuring entrepreneurship is notoriously difficult, studying entrepreneurship and drawing policy conclusions can be extremely challenging. To help us understand the nature of entrepreneurship, I wanted to focus on one scene from the movie Zootopia. In this scene, Nick, a charming, confident, sly, intelligent, and venturesome fox entrepreneur, runs his popsicle side hustle. In the scene, Nick buys a jumbo pop from an elephant ice cream store, then melts down the giant pop, refreezing it into small molds that look like poles, and then sells dozens of these popsicles to the lemmings. He gets the jumbo pop for $15, and after repackaging it, so to speak, he sells 19 popsicles for $2 each, also recycling the sticks by selling to the mice for construction material. Nick later claims that he's made over $200 every day since the age of 12. So, is Nick an entrepreneur?
It's called a hustle, sweetheart.
Let's look at how most economists would think about him. Jean-Baptiste Say, a French economist who first coined the term entrepreneur, believed that an entrepreneur is a person who shifts economic resources out of an area of lower and into an area of higher productivity and greater yield. Richard Cantillon described the entrepreneur as an arbitrageur, or a speculator who bears risks as a result of buying products at certain prices and then selling them at uncertain prices. According to him, entrepreneurs play a critical role in the economy because by taking risks, they reduce market uncertainty and allow valuable production and exchange to occur that otherwise would not. So, is Nick an entrepreneur according to Jean-Baptiste Say and Richard Cantillon? Well, yes. First, Nick identifies a business opportunity and shifts the same resources used to make a jumbo pop to an area where they're even more valued. We know that because the lemmings are willing to pay a premium price to get the popsicles he creates. In a free market economy, market transactions are mutually beneficial. Nobody forces the lemmings to buy the popsicles for a premium price. And prices reveal relative values. The more we're willing to pay for one product, the more we value it relative to others. Second, Nick engages in arbitrage. He buys the jumbo pop at a certain price and then sells it at an uncertain price, which involves undertaking risk. We can easily imagine that it is possible for the lemmings not to buy his product and then he will lose his original investment. So yes, according to Jean-Baptiste Say and Richard Cantillon, Nick is very much an entrepreneur. Frank Knight is another economist who emphasized the importance of risk and uncertainty. In a free market economy, he argued, both consumers and competitors change their behavior all the time, which makes prices and profits rather uncertain over time. In that sense, entrepreneurs are people who get rewarded with profit for making decisions in the face of uncertainty, or for bearing what he called uninsurable risk. Importantly, entrepreneurship requires not only alertness to new opportunities, but also overcoming fear of failure and taking action. So Knight argued entrepreneurs are people who have not only foresight and alertness, but also personality traits such as self-confidence, venturesome nature, and at the end of the day, also need a fair amount of luck to be successful. That seems to fit the profile of Nick, who shows all these character traits. Another influential approach to entrepreneurship is Schumpeter's theory of creative destruction. According to Schumpeter, entrepreneurs do not make small gradual changes. Real entrepreneurs come up with bold new ideas and start high-growth companies that develop breakthrough technologies and products that shift the existing paradigm altogether. This process of entrepreneurial innovation is characterized by disrupting the economy, displacing old products and processes, and ultimately driving economic development and progress. In that sense, both profits and entrepreneurial activity are always temporary, since new breakthrough technologies and processes quickly get adopted and new entrants disrupt the status quo. Entrepreneurs then are only Those people who push the frontiers of creativity and innovation, they're not managers of large established companies, but engineers and inventors. Based on that account of entrepreneurship, Nick is not an entrepreneur, since his business is not an industry disruptive or innovative, but rather replicative and very opportunistic. Today, defining and measuring entrepreneurship remains quite elusive. Some scholars identify entrepreneurs as small business owners or as the self-employed. Others embrace the Schumpeterian view by defining entrepreneurship as paradigm-shifting innovations. Most scholars, however, recognize that new venture creation is at the core of entrepreneurship. Small business activity is usually a popular definition of an entrepreneur. There are several drawbacks to this approach. First, many small businesses are quite ordinary. Hobby, lifestyle, subsistence entrepreneurs, and most self-employed people work in very highly mundane industries such as construction, landscaping, car repair, fast food, truck driving, and so on. In the US, for example, over 2/3 of all self-employed people are solo entrepreneurs, and 3/4 of people say that they want to keep their companies small so they can continue to manage them on their own. Less than 50% of new firms obtain patents, trademarks, or copyrights during their first 4 years. At the same time, excluding businesses that are older than 42 months, even if they're dynamic, innovative, and fast-growing, seems at odds with what most people imagine when they think of entrepreneurship. Second, looking at measures of self-employment and small business activity leads to some counterintuitive findings. For example, Egypt and Chile regularly come up as more entrepreneurial than the US. Part of the problem is that many self-employed people, especially in developing countries, are what we call necessity entrepreneurs. Those are individuals who are pushed into becoming self-employed simply because they don't have any other employment options. For example, street sellers, vendors, or subsistence farmers. Over 1 billion people in developing countries start enterprises out of necessity. Looking at measures of self-employment can produce a rather distorted picture of entrepreneurial activity around the world. More recently, several attempts have been made to measure innovative entrepreneurship. For example, a recent paper uses the number of self-made billionaires, those who made their fortunes versus those who inherited it, as a proxy for nations' entrepreneurial vigor and dynamism. They show that measures of self-employment for small business activity often correlate negatively with the number of billionaires, and that countries with lots of small companies tend to stay stagnant. Unlike necessity entrepreneurs who often lack education, the Schumpeterian entrepreneurs tend to be highly educated. 45% of self-made billionaires had advanced degrees and tend to concentrate in very high-tech industries. The bulk of American billionaires also came from 3 hot clusters: Boston, New York, and the Silicon Valley. This is consistent with other measures of Schumpeterian entrepreneurship that have recently been developed, such as the Global Innovation Index. Despite that, such measures also have drawbacks. For example, looking at a tiny minority of extremely successful entrepreneurs to assess a nation's overall entrepreneurial tendency does not tell us much about the typical entrepreneur in a country. As you can see, defining entrepreneurship is an ongoing debate, and scholars continuously try to narrow the definition of what it means to be an entrepreneur. A recent report by the Royal Society of Arts in Great Britain identified 6 types of entrepreneurs. Visionaries, those are optimistic and growth-oriented businessmen who are driven by a mission and a sense of purpose. Classicals, generally older people who are driven by the pursuit of profit. Independents, typically younger, freedom-loving and internet-dependent business owners who are driven by the need to creatively express their talents. Locals, those are usually low-tech businesses that serve the local community, earn a modest income, but are generally relaxed and stress-free. Survivors, those are hard-working individuals who have a hard time making ends meet. And dabblers, part-timers who view their business more as a hobby than as a source of main income. Each one of these groups plays an important role in our lives. However, each one of these entrepreneurial tribes differs in a meaningful way in terms of their ambitions, in terms of their expectations, in terms of their financial situation, or even well-being and their impact on the economy.